Few years back, in 2015, Pope Francis visited an evangelical church in the city of Turin in Italy. He was warmly welcomed into the church. During his address to the congregation, Pope called them the first evangelicals. He apologized to the church for the past. Take a listen.
In his last day in the city of Turin, Pope Francis made history by visiting a Waldensian church. It's the first time a pope visits an evangelical church of that particular denomination. In doing so, he received a warm welcome. The Pope got to know this church well in Argentina. With about 30,000 faithful worldwide, it's quite small, with most of its presence in Italy and France, where it began back in the 12th century. In his speech, the Pope addressed past persecution. He asked for forgiveness on behalf of the Catholic Church.
Vi chiedo perdono per gli atteggiamenti e i comportamenti non cristiani, persino non umani che nella storia abbiamo avuto contro di voi. In nome del Signore Gesù Cristo, perdonateci.
In this brief episode, we shall explore these important questions. Who were the Waldensians? When did they originate? What did they believe? Why did the Catholic Church brutally and repeatedly persecute them? This background information would help us understand why the Pope apologized to the Waldensians for the past sins of the Catholic Church. Welcome to Discern Scripture YouTube channel. Thank you for stopping by to check out this episode. If you like the content of this video, please like and share. Also, please do subscribe and help us reach a wider audience. Now, let's get on with the video. Part 1. Waldensian Origins. The Waldensians trace their origins to Peter Waldo, a rich merchant from the city of Lyons in France. At some point in his life, Waldo heard the story of Saint Alexius, and he felt very convicted for his extravagant lifestyle and greed. The story of Saint Alexius goes like this. He was a son of a rich Roman senator. He gave up his position, embraced extreme poverty, and lived several years in Syria. Like his hero, Alexius, Waldo gave up his wealth and embraced a lifestyle of simplicity and poverty. It was Peter Waldo who got large portions of New Testament translated into local French dialect, Franco-Provençal. So Waldo can be credited as the first person to commission a local translation apart from the Latin Vulgate that the Roman Church approved at that time. Then Waldo used these translated portions to preach among the people in the city of Lyon. His preaching about simplicity and poverty as a way of imitating Christian faith attracted people. He proclaimed boldly that no one can serve two masters, God and mammon, that you may learn to place hope in God and not in riches, according to Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. Many people began to follow him. His followers were called the poor of the Lyons, or the poor of God. They were also known as the Waldensians after Peter Waldo. Now let's move on to the part 2, Waldensian Doctrines. Here let's talk a bit about what the Waldensians believed. In fact, their beliefs were very close to the views of Luther and other Protestant reformers from the 16th century. The Waldensian Confession of Faith from the 12th century is preserved and it comes down to us. It contains 14 articles of faith. Let me highlight a few. Article number 1 affirms the Apostles' Creed. We believe and firmly maintain all that is contained in the 12 articles of the symbol, commonly called the Apostles' Creed, and we regard as heretical whatever is inconsistent with the said 12 articles. So the Waldensians rejected anything that was not part of the Apostles' Creed as heretical. They were not a fringe group, rather they saw themselves as believers in the apostolic tradition. Article number 3 acknowledges the 66 books of the Bible, and it makes a distinction between the authoritative books of the Bible and the apocryphal books. The Waldensians did not hold the apocryphal books as equally authoritative for doctrine. Article number 8 holds that Christ is the only mediator. The Waldensians respected Mary but rejected the importance given to Mary and other saints in the Roman Catholic worship. And as to the Virgin Mary, she was holy, humble, and full of grace, and this we also believe concerning all other saints, namely, that they are waiting in heaven for the resurrection of their bodies, the day of judgment. Article number 9 rejects the purgatory indulgence teaching of the Catholic Church. Article number 10 rejected the festival days, the vigils of the saints, the holy water, abstaining from eating meat on specific days, and many other later Catholic beliefs. Article number 13 acknowledged only two sacraments, baptism and the Lord's Supper. We also have another updated confession of the Waldensians from the 16th century, which is preserved till today. Their teachings anticipated the Protestant Reformation and resonated well with the later Reformation. Almost all major doctrinal areas, they were in agreement with the Reformers and rejected Catholicism throughout their history from the 12th century. Now, let's move on to part 3. How did the Waldensians separate from the Roman Church? Initially, Roman Catholic Church was not bothered by Waldo and his preaching activities. Waldo must have seen himself as a pious Catholic, like his hero, Saint Alexius. However, this soon changed. The Archbishop of Lyons raised complaints about Waldo's activities and the growing number of his followers. And so Pope Alexander III invited Waldo to come to Rome and explain himself before the Roman Curia. So Waldo met with Pope and the council. The Pope and the Curia appreciated the vow of poverty Waldo and his followers took, but they did not approve the preaching activities of Waldo and his followers in the local dialect, as they were untrained. Waldo left Rome without the approval of Pope, yet he decided to defy the Catholic Church. Waldo and his followers increased their preaching and missionary efforts. They began proclaiming doctrines that were directly at odds with the Catholicism, such as the right of all worthy members, including women, to preach the scriptures. They also began preaching against purgatory, prayers for the dead, and indulgences. And the movement began to diverge away and took a radical opposite stand against the Roman Catholic Church. Soon, Waldo and his followers were excommunicated from the Catholic Church in 1184. They were officially condemned as heretics in 1215 at the Fourth Lateran Council by Pope Innocent III. And the Waldensians came to view the Roman Catholic Church, or Rome, as the whore of Babylon, and Pope as Antichrist. Now let's move on to part 4, Waldensian persecution. The brutal Roman Catholic persecution of the Waldensians. After being branded as heretics, Waldensians experienced waves and waves of brutal persecutions for centuries from the 1200s. In the 13th and 14th centuries, the Catholics targeted the Waldensians as part of the broader efforts to root out heresy. The Inquisition was a church-led tribunal that employed methods such as torture to extract confessions from accused heretics. Waldensians were forced to recant their beliefs or face execution. In the German city of Strasbourg, several Waldensians, some 80 of them, were burned at the stake in 1211. They were executed in public spectacles. It was meant to discourage others from joining the movement. In 1487, Pope Innocent VIII issued a bull, an official document titled Id Nostri Caudes, meaning our hearty desires. It called for the extermination of the Waldensians. The Pope called for a crusade against Waldensians to destroy them completely. He provided plenary indulgence or forgiveness of sins to anyone who would join crusade against the Waldensians. On a side note, I want you to know that popes called crusades not only against the Muslims in faraway Holy Land. They called for crusades to destroy these dissenting communities that did not bend their knees to papacy and Roman Catholicism in different places. One of the most infamous episodes of persecution occurred in 1655 in the Piedmont region of northern Italy. Many Waldensians lived in these secluded valleys. The French and Roman Catholic authorities, monks and priests under the leadership of Duke of Charles Emmanuel II of Savoy, launched a violent crusade against the Waldensians. Between April 24 and April 30 of 1655, thousands of Waldensians were killed. The account of this extremely shocking massacre was recorded carefully by historians. Here is the account from the Israel of the Alps, from chapter number 7, page number 349. Little children were torn from the arms of their mothers, dashed against the rocks, and cast carelessly away. The sick or the aged, both men and women, were either burned in their houses or hacked in pieces or mutilated. half murdered and flayed alive. They were exposed in a dying state to the heat of the sun, or to flames, or to ferocious beasts. Others were tied in a state of nakedness into the form of balls, the head between the legs, and in this state they were rolled down the precipices. Women and young girls were violated, impaled, set up naked upon pikes at the corners of the roads, burnt alive, roasted upon lances, and cut in pieces by these soldiers of faith, as by the cannibals. Finally, the massacre and the removal of children were succeeded by conflagration. The monks and the propagandists, the zealous Catholics running from house to house with resinous torches or incendiary projectiles, and ravaging in the midst of the fires these villages now filled with corpses. The account is quite horrific, violent, and most painful. The violence committed by these Catholic monks, religious zealots, against the people of faith was sickening. They orchestrated these barbaric acts of cruelty in the name of and with the official authorization by the Roman Catholic Church and popes. They were literally drunk on the blood of saints and martyrs, like the Whore of Babylon in Revelation chapter 17, verse 5. It is important for us in 21st century to know the atrocities the Roman Catholic Church committed against the Waldensians for rejecting unbiblical beliefs and practices of the Roman Catholic Church. This 1655 massacre is also referred to as the Piedmont Easter because this massacre occurred around the Easter time. This also marked the near destruction of the Waldensian community in the Piedmont valleys. Only few communities survived. In the aftermath, many Waldensians fled to nearby countries, including Switzerland and France, and they were welcomed, sheltered, resettled by Protestant communities. Famous poet John Milton wrote a poem that immortalized the memory of this brutal massacre. He titled it, "On the Late Massacre in the Piedmont." Here's the text. "Avenge, O Lord, thy slaughtered saints, whose bones lie scattered on the alpine mountains cold, even them who kept thy truth so pure of old, when all our fathers worshipped stock and stones. Forget not, in thy book, record their groans, who were thy sheep, and in their ancient fold, slain by the bloody Piemontes, that rolled mother with infant down the rocks. Their moans the wails redouble to the hills, and they to heaven. Their martyred blood and ashes so over all the Italian fields, where still doeth sway the triple tyrant, that from these may grow 100-fold, who, having learned thy way, early may fly the Babylonian woe." John Milton captures the fury and pain in these cryptic lines and pleads the Lord to avenge for the innocent blood spilled on the Piedmont valleys. The reference to triple tyrant points to the Pope, and Babylonian woe in the last line refer to the Roman Catholic Church, which was called in Protestant writings of that period as the Whore of Babylon, that was drunk on the blood of saints, as seen in Revelation chapter 17, 5 and 6. Milton envisions thousands will rise from the ashes of the massacre and continue to live out their faith against the oppressive system of Rome and conquer it with the truth of the gospel. Because of these relentless Catholic crusades and brutal persecution, the Waldensian movement was completely suppressed in many countries. However, it continued to remain rooted in Italy and Germany and Bohemia despite periodic persecutions. They continue to exist despite Catholic threat of inquisition and persecution. In 1532, Waldensians became part of the Protestant Reformation and accepted Reformation tenets of Genevan reformers. In fact, the translation Peter Waldo initiated was incorporated into the French Bible translation. In 1858, Waldensians were given the right to freedom of worship in Italy. Waldensians continue to exist till today as part of larger Protestant church while maintaining their unique ancient heritage. There are roughly about 30,000 Waldensians around the world today, upholding their beliefs and living out their faith for the glory of God. It is to one of such Waldensian congregation in the city of Turin the Pope visited in 2015. Now here is my closing reflection. As Protestants, it is important for us to be aware of the history of protest against the pagan practices of the Roman Catholic Church. It did not start with Martin Luther. It goes way back in church history to the Middle Ages and even beyond. Waldensians appear in the historical scene some 400 years before Luther and had a lot in common with the magisterial reformers and the Protestant movement. We know from history that Roman Catholic Church was hell-bent on destroying that movement. In 1179, at the Third Council of the Lateran, Pope Alexander III called the Waldenses a pest of long existence. He excommunicated them, called them heretics. In 1487, Pope Innocent VIII issued an official papal bull and called for the crusade to exterminate Waldensians that resulted in several waves of persecution. He offered plenary indulgences to all who participated in that unholy war against Waldensians. The Piedmont Massacre of 1655 is the most brutal violence committed against Waldensians, which sent shockwaves across Europe among the Protestant communities and people of faith in general. And now we have Pope Francis attempting to rectify the evils the Catholic Church committed in the name of defending religion. He wants to wash the bloodstains of thousands of innocent, faithful Waldensian Christians that the Roman Church murdered in the name of doing God's work.
Vi chiedo perdono per gli atteggiamenti e i comportamenti non cristiani, persino non umani che nella storia abbiamo avuto contro di voi. In nome del Signore Gesù Cristo, perdonateci.
As Christians, we pray the Lord's Prayer, forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. We give and receive forgiveness when it is sought with sincere penitence. Though it is painful, it is also heartwarming to see Waldensian leaders and the church members warmly welcoming the Pope into their church, the man who represents the monstrous institution that caused them tremendous suffering for centuries. They showed remarkable grace and the heart of Christ while embracing the Pope. The Waldensians were the first Protestants. Pope Francis called them the first evangelicals. It is true, they lived in the medieval world, which was spiritually a very dark place to be. Their motto in Latin says, Lux lucet in tenebris, a light shines in the darkness. They were indeed the early reform group to shine the light of simple gospel of Christ into their world. They suffered tremendously and paid a heavy price for standing up for the gospel. Soon, the morning star of Reformation arose. John Wycliffe and John Huss became the forerunners of Protestant Reformation. Post tenebras lux, after the darkness come light. With Martin Luther, Protestant Reformation became a strong global movement, a force to reckon with. The story of Waldensians and Reformation is a powerful reminder that God preserves the true church through history, the faithful within corrupt institutions, and calls them to follow him with all their hearts, in love and courage, against all odds, against all oppositions, against all persecutions, for the glory of God. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe and support our channel. Click on the bell icon so that you can get notification whenever we post a new video. Also, feel free to leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. God bless you all. Shalom.